gigatons per year by 2030. And that work's been very much driven by C40, the Global Covenant of Mayors, and ICLEI. But in addition, the Under 2 Coalition, which was founded, as its name suggests, when we were all aiming for Under 2, and has been co-chaired recently by Scotland, California, KwaZulu-Natal, Chungnam in Korea, and Querétaro in Mexico, have changed their membership criteria to be net zero in line with a 1.5-degree future. And those 260 governments represent nearly half of the world's GDP and a quarter of the world's population. So many of them have already updated their commitment, and we expect the rest of them to do so in the next 12 months. Also, in a big emphasis on the most vulnerable in urban contexts, we've seen the launch of the UK-Germany-backed 27.5 million urban climate action programme to provide technical assistance to at least 15 mayors of megacities in developing countries. Any of you who saw the film Life on the Front Line about climate migration into Dakar will have a sense of just how much that money is needed. Meanwhile, 33 cities and more than 76 regional governments, again, including Maharashtra, small state in India with a population of 124 million people, have joined the Race to Resilience campaign. And the C40's Mayors Migration Council Task Force has convened to champion investments to boost adaptation and reduce displacement in migrant communities, including some initial support from the Robert Bosch Stiftung for work in Africa. And then finally, to the built environment element of today, we've seen a growing number of businesses signing the World Green Building Council's updated commitment to drive operational emissions to net zero by 2030, as well as a lot more momentum on embodied carbon. We now have over $1.2 trillion of real estate assets under management committed to halving emissions by 2030. And cities, including San Francisco, Los Angeles, Mexico City, Oslo, and Budapest, have joined as part of the C40's Clean Construction Declaration to halve the construction emissions of new buildings by 2030. So lots more momentum from the non-state actors, cities, regions, and the complicated construction value chain. Thank you.
Thank you, Nigel. We'll now take questions from the floor. If I can ask if you state your name and where you are from. We have a standing microphone, if you can try not to touch it as it's getting passed round. Gentleman in the front here, please.
Hi, Ben Spencer from the Sunday Times. Mr. Sharma, you and others describe this as the last best chance to avert catastrophic climate change. Now we're being told the best we can hope for here is a roadmap to next year, to the year after, to talk about it all again. Has this conference failed?
Well, what we've always said is that what we want coming out of COP26 is to be able to say with credibility that we have kept 1.5 within reach. You will have seen in August the report that came out, which made clear that whilst the window on keeping 1.5 within reach is closing, it is still possible to get there. And that is why I and others have also talked about the decisive decade. What you will have seen in the draft cover decision so far is setting out how we think parties should return and look again at the commitments that they have made. Ultimately, it is going to be up to parties to come forward with consensus on the cover decisions and indeed the other texts as well. We will be circulating another round of the draft cover decisions later on tonight, overnight. But I've been very clear, Archie Young has been very clear, is that we are urging ambition. And I've held meetings with quite a number of the negotiating groups, and I have been told by groups, by individual parties, that they want to see ambition in the outcome of COP26.
Thank you. Gentleman in the second row with the red tie.
Robert Peston, ITV. Mr. Sharma, we just heard from Frans Timmermans. He said that his hope is that the cover decisions would set in train a process such that within a year, the contributions made by individual countries would have been toughened up so that 1.5 would be achieved within a year. We are right now seeing many countries trying to weaken even, some would say, a fairly soft set of commitments that you set out in your initial cover declaration. What hope do you have that 1.5 will be kept alive in that meaningful sense that we will reach it within a year?
Well, Robert, I mean, I do think that the draft co-decisions we put out were ambitious, and I think if they are adopted as we intend, I think we will be able to say with credibility that we have kept 1.5 within reach. And in the draft that was set out, it makes very clear that countries should come back again ahead of the stocktake in 2023. We talk about an annual synthesis report, a meeting of leaders on this issue. Those discussions have been taking place. I'll ask Archie if he wants to come in because he had yesterday a long discussion with heads of delegation about the cover decisions. And as I said, we will issue further text overnight. Archie, do you want to comment?
Thank you. And I'd start by saying that keeping 1.5 alive requires a whole series of actions and elements from this COP. As you know, part of that, actually a major part, is all the NDCs, the nationally determined contributions, and long-term strategies and net zero commitments that were made in advance of COP, thanks to the extensive encouragement by the COP president and the global diplomatic effort that went into encouraging countries to really come forward with their highest possible ambition. Another element that can really help keep 1.5 alive, and forgive me that I always bring it back to the technical detail, is the rules, the systems, the mechanisms that actually can give confidence for countries that partly that they will do what they say they will do, but also that can enable higher ambition. Then a third element, yes, it is the political signal that comes from this COP. A lot of that will come from the cover decisions. As the COP president said, I held consultations with all heads of delegation yesterday afternoon. That was open to observers, so I'm sure that some of you will have followed that and picked up some of what was said. There are very strongly divergent views on a number of elements, including some countries, one country representing a group that represents several countries, suggested actually we should delete the whole section on mitigation. So that, I think, gives you a sense that there is not yet at this conference a consensus that we do need to collectively ramp up our ambition. But also what is clear is that underpinning that is a desire to see greater ambition across all elements of the Paris Agreement, and that is exactly what we are pushing for.
Lady in the front row here. It's coming back.
Thanks. Hi, Lisa Friedman from the New York Times. Thanks for doing this. Two questions. Could you tell us what sticking points there are at this juncture on loss and damage? And also, I'm wondering, out of the US-China deal, has that had any impact, shaken anything loose in the actual negotiations? If not, why not? If so, anything specific? Thanks.
Great, thank you. Let me take those two, and then on loss and damage, if Archie wants to come in. So on loss and damage, what we have done, as I said in my opening remarks, we've obviously agreed text has been set out on the Santiago network and the work program that follows. You know, I hope we'll be able to gavel this shortly. There is further work that is going on the issue of loss and damage, and I'll ask Archie if he wants to comment on that. On the issue of the US-China agreement, I mean, look, you know, I very much welcome the fact that this is an agreement that sets out cooperation between the world's two biggest emitters. I think that is good news, and what I hope is that the spirit of cooperation in that agreement is also going to drive forward the negotiations here at COP26.
So if I add to that on loss and damage, but before I do, I just looked across at Nigel and I realized that I missed a crucial part of the elements that can keep 1.5 alive, related to this COP, which is the incredible efforts of the high-level champions and other campaigns and initiatives that can accelerate action across all sectors and all parts of society. Apologies, Nigel.
Well, actually, no, it's not really my efforts, it's the cities and regions. But I think it is worth reminding everybody that, for example, the ambition we saw yesterday that clearly indicates that combustion engines on its way out in the early 30s will not be yet reflected in many NDCs. So when you look at assessments of adding up all the NDCs, there's another source of ambition enhancement which is outside of current national plans, which is the real economy.
Thanks. And then on loss and damage, the COP president asked Minister Dijsselbloem of Luxembourg and Minister Charles Jr. of Jamaica to consult, first of all, on how the work on the Santiago network, this new entity that can enable that, be that catalyst for action for loss and damage, how that could be strengthened. And they've made progress on that, and that is reflected in new draft texts. But also asked them the question of what more can be done, or what more might be possible to be done, either starting at this COP or beyond, to really accelerate action on loss and damage. And so we are continuing to discuss that with parties. We wait to see what parties come forward with. But I think the very fact that, let's see how the cover decisions develop. Like I said, we heard a lot of comments yesterday. But our draft was the first potential cover decisions that actually had its own section on loss and damage. It had been referenced in a couple before, but I think that really highlighted the political imperative that we are putting on this issue.
And actually, just adding to that point, is that I think that also demonstrates the movement that we have seen on the discussion around loss and damage. I think there has been a change in the way that all parties are approaching this, which is something I very much welcome.
Gentleman in the second row in the centre.
Thank you. Krishnan Giri-Murthy, Channel 4 News. Are the activists right to say that a text that doesn't have a commitment to phase out fossil fuels shows that this process is meaningless and is the blah, blah, blah that they had warned about at the beginning? And how damaging to your ability to negotiate are things like Britain's refusal to join France, Denmark and Costa Rica in the commitment to end oil and gas?
So I think the first thing to say is that obviously in the draft cover decisions, it does reflect the issue on fossil fuels. Let's wait and see what emerges in terms of the next round of text. I think on the wider issue of the UK government domestically joining, I think, this Beyond Oil and Gas Alliance, I think the first thing I'd say is that the UK has come a very long way in terms of our transition to clean energy. I mean, just a few years ago, we had a very small percentage of our energy coming from offshore wind. We now actually have the biggest offshore wind sector in the world. I mean, literally the biggest in the world. And the aim is to quadruple that by 2030, and I think it may be possible to go even beyond that. The other thing that, as a result of that, what you've seen is that the use of oil and gas has diminished in the energy sector in the United Kingdom. And what has been really important as part of that is also to ensure this just transition, as we always talk about. So that is why the government put in place the North Sea transition deal. You know, I would say that the Committee on Climate Change does recognize the fact that our energy mix will still have some oil and gas in it. But I think it's worth recognizing that we are recognized around the world as a leader in terms of clean energy transition.
Gentleman in the second row here.
Thank you. Bing Chen from Shanghai Media Group. I also have a follow-up question on the US-China joint declaration. So, Mr. President, you just mentioned you appreciate the spirit, but yet there might still not be good enough to close the deal with this declaration. So what substantial progress do you expect to see in the next step? Thank you.
Yes, as I said, I mean, I think, you know, I welcome this cooperation. I think it does help to provide some momentum. And it's an opportunity for China and the US within their respective negotiating groups and talking to other parties to encourage them as well to come forward. I mean, ultimately, what we are looking for here is a negotiated outcome amongst almost 200 countries. That's what we are looking to achieve consensus on. Ultimately, what is an ambitious agreement? An ambitious agreement is one that keeps 1.5 within reach. That is what I have said right from the start of taking on this role, and that is what we continue to push for, an ambitious outcome at COP26. Frankly, that's what the world deserves.
Got time for one more question as we have to wrap up quickly. Gentleman in the middle, the blue shirt. Thanks.
Thank you. Mark Peperkorn, Volkskrant, Netherlands. It's a question for Mr. Sharma. Yesterday, actually, you said that by now we would have, I think you used the phrase semi-final or near-final texts. They are not there. Were you too optimistic yesterday, or are you trying to stage a kind of a moment of drama which is needed to push it further tomorrow? Thanks.
Well, I think people have sometimes described me as no drama Sharma. Well, look, what I'm trying to do, along with Archie and the whole team, is to push this process forward. I think quite a lot has been achieved, and I think you're seeing that in the texts that are coming. And there is a real spirit of cooperation here as well. But we are still some way away from finalizing those sort of very critical issues which have been outstanding. And I don't think we can overemphasize how difficult this is. If it was easy, we would have resolved this over the past 6 years, but we haven't. And that's why, I am ensuring that we use every moment between now and the end of this COP to reach agreement. It's why we've got facilitating ministers driving this forward, why Archie is working very closely with negotiators across all parties to drive this over the line. We will keep going. I want an ambitious outcome coming out of this COP.
Thank you, everyone. See you tomorrow.